Welcome to ADHD What Now, where we talk about holistic, as in whole person and whole family support for bodies, brains, skills, and relationships when a child has ADHD. I'm your host, Veronica Hunter, and today we're going to talk with Dr. Varleisha Gibbs, who is one of my favorite occupational therapists, and we're going to talk about how to stop feeling guilty for not staying calm when emotions flare and what to do instead.
Dr. Gibbs, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your expertise, because I've watched in that PESI training just how your heart really is for helping people and to using your own experience from home and from your professional experience to really help people and to see kids thrive and flourish. So to start off, would you please share just some of the transformation that you've seen? Maybe if you have one particular example of a family that was affected, like what did their life look like beforehand, and what did their life look like after utilizing some of the strategies and techniques that you teach?
Thank you. And I'm happy to be here. And thank you for seeing my heart. That's always a pleasure when someone can truly see your passion. I think, for me, seeing the work in action has been the biggest gift of my career. I can think about a few different children as, for the latter part of your question or request that I could speak about. But I guess most recently, I had the pleasure of having a farmer, one of my former clients and families reach out on social media. And it didn't click immediately who it was, because I'm looking at this video and I'm like, hey, that's a grown man there, right? And what is this about? And it was this wonderful professional. She has homes that she has, for centers for children that could come with autism and ADHD and, just different diagnoses, and wonderful program. And I'm looking at it from that lens, not realizing that's my former client and her son, who's now grown. And she wrote back to me because I said something like wonderful work. And she says, Varleisha, thank you so much for everything you did for us. And look, he's doing great. And he was dancing in the video and my heart just melted. I just, because this is a child that came to me with severe challenges, severe sensory seeking type of behaviors that would sometimes lead to aggressive behaviors. I think during my assessment, I got with him head butted in the lip, and I came out to tell mom, it's okay, don't worry about it. It was, I positioned myself wrong, don't worry. And I got to learn him and to really identify his needs. That he needed constant input. His threshold was so high, which we can talk about later. But, it wasn't enough just to allow him to, jump on a trampoline for a little bit or, go outside for a little bit. He needed intense intervention. And so with some of the things we did in the clinic, mom would come into the sessions and I sent her home with equipment and things. We purchased things for the house because it was the carryover with her that actually made him thrive and be able to simply, participate in everyday life things, getting dressed, eating, playing with his sister. She said that was the best part of all of it. Was we had a doorway swing for him at home, and his sister would push him on a swing. And she said just to see them playing together caused her, just brought her to tears. So that's why I do this work. That's the passion for me. And did I miss the first part of your request there?
No, that was excellent. You covered it, right? Like that, just to see what is possible. And then one of the parts that you highlighted in the story too is the collaboration between you as the professional and the parent at home. The quote that we have here, a lot of emphasis is given to the prefrontal cortex, right? Some forms of therapy may not work for a child with neurological dysfunction. Some intervention strategies that emphasize conscious activation of the front part of the brain to help children learn to control their emotions remain ineffective for some. So can you dig into that a little bit? Because I'm just thinking as a parent, what I experienced, for example, is that I could give my kid or myself all of these cognitive strategies, thinking like, so you're going to do this, but then they would fail in the moment, or it was hard, or I couldn't access that at the time. And so what do I look for? So I know to use cognitive strategies versus to use some of these other strategies.
Mm. Well, a lot of what I talk about relates to part of our nervous system that responds automatically, right? The autonomic nervous system. To kind of break it down in simplistic terms, think about when you have moments of being anxious or nervous, right? Anyone that's taken a test in their lifetime that's been nervous about it can understand and appreciate this, that your autonomic nervous system takes over and you can't even think. You're like, I know, I studied this, right? I have this. What's wrong with me? Or you are a dancer. Like sometimes I would dance. I was a dancer and I would get on a stage like, oh my God, I'm forgetting the choreography. What in the world? We practiced this for months, right? So those are examples of not having access to the front part of your brain, right? That helps you with planning and executing and executive functioning, making sense of things, all that good stuff, right? For our thought processes. And so we need it all to work together. We need that nervous system to be balanced enough that the information from the body is now traveling to the brain and vice versa. Now the information from my brain is able to travel down to my body and I can move again and remember my choreography, right? So with our children, a couple of ways to kind of detect what's going on, really, it's that I always say behavior is just a manifestation of what's happening physiologically in the body, right? That's the eyes of, what's happening neurologically. And so look at their eyes, for example. We have nerves that come off the back part of our brain stem area that really are involved in this autonomic nervous system. And some of those nerves connect and wrap around to the face. And so when you have this, let's say overactivation or too much sensory stimulation coming in or whatever it is, anxiety, you can actually see a lack of eye contact. You can actually see a flat affect, right? Or aggression. Look at the face. You can start there because that'll kind of tell you. If you see this, I had a family member that would get anxious when it came time to homework and her eyes would just be, it's fear, right? And so that tells me, okay, we need to slow down and maybe do something else, right? Because with the connection of the eyes and the face, and polyvagal theory is a good one to look into if you're interested in this. When you look at that face and that flat affect, that'll tell you if they're actually hearing you, like listening to the words and understanding and perceiving what's being said versus the sound just coming in and making them even more overstimulated or even shut down even more. And so I would start there. Sometimes children will tell you, right, verbally, I'm not going to do this, or I don't want to do it, or whatever it is. That's your opportunity to say, okay, instead of jumping into this homework, let's go do some wall push-ups, right? Or go outside and play catch for a little bit. That's going to get that dopamine going. That's going to maybe meet a threshold. Maybe afterwards we can do some big bear hugs and, mom give them a big, nice hug and squeeze that body. And now maybe we're ready, right? Sometimes we just need a drink of water through a straw, and ice cold water through a straw may be able to get them to where they need to be. Mm-hmm. And then you do the cognitive piece, of course.
Mm-hmm. What I love about what you just said is it helps to avoid conflicts that didn't need to happen. As a parent, I want to incorporate your strategies in my home life as well. And let's say perhaps I live in a location where I have more challenging access to get support around me, right? Like there are some people that just don't have an abundance of OTs around to help support them, for example. How would I know what I could do at home, or like what's the guidance? Do you have guidance? How do I incorporate this at home, or how do I know what level I can do at home?
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly would say I have different, published work that maybe some is more geared to specifically to parents, such as the Raising Kids with Sensory Processing Disorders is actually a week-by-week guide for parents that is straightforward, and it's going to map it out for you, right? It's going to tell you this is what you should do in this situation. And with you mentioned the self-regulation and mindfulness book, same thing. With both of those, was specifically the self-regulation and mindfulness book, I try to encourage people to read part 1, because part 2 has more of the activities, and people tend to just hop to part 2 without the part 1 that gives you kind of the background we've been talking about today, to understanding the why, so that they can have a better grasp on even how I'm defining mindful activities.
Thank you so much for being here today. Can you share, where can anybody find you online?
So you can find me at drvgibbs.com. So V for Varleisha. And also on social media, Dr. Varleisha on Instagram. It's not too many people with my name, so you can find me on Twitter or Facebook as well, if you just put my name in, and I would love to connect. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here and for elevating the topics and for connecting us with resources and tools that we can use to actually affect actionable change inside of our families for the good of ourselves and our children.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
A great big thank you to Dr. Gibbs for being here today. And in case you were wondering, one of the books that we mentioned that is hers is Self-Regulation and Mindfulness. And inside it has one of my favorite explanations of the brain and occupational therapy and sensory systems right in the front of this book. And then the back is filled with all kinds of activities that one can do with kids to promote self-regulation and mindfulness. Enjoy.